Hi, I'm Frank Morrow with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and this is Piyush Pandey with Deloitte. Piyush will cover most of the technical parts of our project here, and I'll wrap it up toward the end.
Thank you, Frank. Good afternoon, everyone. So quickly, I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to make it very quick. We'll have the agenda. What we have right now is we're going to go through the quick overview of the pilot, what we planned to accomplish earlier, and then where we stand at this point of time. We have a couple of user experience scenarios. So I'm going to just show you one, just to kind of give you an idea of how it looks like when the user will actually go to this solution and then go through the user enrollment process and identity verification and then enhanced verification, which is what we are planning to implement. And then the key accomplishments. And then finally, Frank is going to cover the lessons learned part. So very high-level overview, the objective of the pilot, and just like the Michigan team, there were two key goals we had. Make sure that we provide streamlined access to the citizens of Pennsylvania. They access over 40 plus applications, and agencies provide a lot of benefit services to the citizens. But they have to go through each agency and then go through the enrollment process and create their account and then kind of remember all those credentials. And then it's a lot of trouble and very cumbersome process. And then obviously, as a part of the process, we would like to reduce the fraud and some of the outdated processes which we typically use in this identity management scenario. So what we envisioned when the pilot request came up, and this is the futuristic view of the solution. What we envisioned is the user will go through a centralized exchange type of solution where they can actually get their identity enrollment processes done as well as the identity verification. And then once the credential is secured in terms of elevated, if you need a LOA2 credential, they should be able to access all the 40 plus applications or agencies or service they provide from those agencies. So that's a futuristic view. Now what we are developing as part of this pilot is a foundation for this solution. So we are developing an identity exchange solution which actually facilitates the communication between the relying parties and identity providers and the attribute providers as well. So I'm going to actually give you a quick overview of the technical architecture. So as you can see at the center, you have identity exchange solution. And that is where the facilitation of communication between the providers, relying parties, and attribute verifiers is being done. The one more thing which we have done here is created a layer of abstraction. So what it does is there is no way relying parties or identity providers will be able to know where this user is going to go next. What they would know is the request is coming from the identity exchange, or the request is from the relying party standpoint, they would know that the request or credential is being provided by the exchange. So there is a privacy enhancing technology what we have implemented here. There's attribute verifiers and credential service provider. We have at this point of time one credential service provider which we plan to implement, which is a public welfare agency. And attribute verifiers, we have Experian and the PennDOT, which is a driver's license verification system. What we also plan to do is, on the relying party side, we have developed a custom plugin which will be part of the relying party application, which they can consume and then integrate with the identity exchange solution and then seamlessly able to access the credentials provided by the solution. Now, if you can imagine, this is more of a very atomized type, compartmentalized type solution. So on the left-hand side, as we decide to expand this solution in future, we will be able to extend this to multiple credential services providers, multiple attribute verifiers, without having any impact on the relying party side. So I'm going to show you one scenario, a typical scenario where user will access an application. And then the first thing that application will do is, since there is a relying party integration piece residing on the application which will detect the request coming from the end user, it will redirect user to the credentials selector page. which is where right now we have only one credential service provider, but in future there will be more as we expand this solution. But user will select that provider and then provide the authentication credentials. And behind the scene, what it is doing is the identity exchange solution is transforming the SAML request from making sure that the request, the source of request is not known to the identity provider. Because we don't want identity providers to be able to track, and since this is a state and benefit delivery type environment, be able to track what benefits or what agency user is trying to get to. So that is the piece which we are covering behind the scene, and I just showed you the technical view of that. What it does is it transforms the SAML request and make sure there is a layer of abstraction in the middle. So that's a privacy enhancing piece which we have included. There are a few more scenarios which we have. I'm just going to verbally explain. There are scenarios where users are accessing an application which only requires level of LOA1 credential. They can seamlessly access it. If the user requires, the application requires LOA2 credential, our identity exchange solution will detect the request is coming from an agency and which requires LOA2, but a user only has LOA1. So it will actually redirect user through the enrollment pages where user can actually enhance the identity to LOA2 by going through the proofing process. And what it also does is, if we open this up for the external or commercial identity providers, and even if they are only willing to provide LOA1, this solution will have capability to enhance their credentials to LOA2, but obviously for the use of Commonwealth applications only. But we can actually enhance that and keep track of those credentials, and when they come back, they will be LOA2 certified. So there are other privacy notices which we have implemented. So when the user is going through the verification process, we're going to make sure that we notify user what data they are going to provide, how that data will be used, and what data we're going to exchange with the relying parties. So there will be consent and notification for the end users. In case of Experian, obviously this is going to go through the third-party attribute proofing service, and there is always a fear of if there's any impact on the credit report, so which it does not, because this is simply identity verification process. They will get to see this message as well. So where do we stand at this point? So we have just finished development, actually, a few months ago, and now we are in the deployment stage. So in deployment stage, we are actually first going through the integration process where we are all the various different components of the solution, making sure that they adhere to the use cases and scenarios which we have laid out earlier. And then we're going to start the staging deployment and production, and we'll be, as of now, we are good to go for October 17th go live. What we will be enabling on October 17th, again, those 4 components very quickly. Identity exchange piece, which will provide the identity broker services and SAML transformation feature. Credential service provider, public welfare is acting as the credential service provider, where we have enhanced the identity verification flows to include Experian and the driver's license verification. And the attribute verifiers are there, as well as the relying party plugin, which we have customized so that relying party can consume those credentials. And obviously, they can always have a choice to go directly to Exchange as well. So there is a flexibility of using either the customized plugin or their own code to access the solution. Impact to the ecosystem. So as I talked about, this is really a foundation for us, but when we expand this to include the social media, or there's a talks going on whether we can integrate this with the F6 solution so that we can leverage all the credential service providers which are already part of F6. And so it would be a connection between Commonwealth Identity Broker System to F6 Identity Broker System, and be able to expand that into a bigger identity ecosystem. Credentials will be interoperable. Citizens can use credential as they come in, and for any agency from which they are applying for the benefits. It's cost effective since we have a kind of shared services model. The cost of the identity proofing, the infrastructure is distributed across the agencies. and it's easy to use. So Frank is going to cover the lessons learned part.
The lesson learned, I work for the Enterprise Security Information Office, and I tend to deal more with the security types and the techie types, and they fully understand the benefits of NSTIC. Relying parties don't necessarily do that when you start talking to the business side. So there's a hesitation to get involved with the pilot with some of the relying parties. I think one of the other or several of the other speakers also mentioned trying to get the relying parties on board is an issue. They know what they're used to. This is something new, and it's unknown to them and cause for angst. So again, we definitely have to deal more with the business people and explain the benefits and why they should go for something more secure and private. Also, due to the short time frame of the pilot, trying to work with some of our relying parties, some of them were just not possible. They were interested, but they're looking at a time frame of 1 to 2 years for their application, not 9 to 12 months. Or in some cases, in the time that we had looked at them as a possibility back when we made the proposal, they were already going full force by the time we got the grant. So they also have their priorities, and we have to address those. As soon as we did start getting some momentum, though, we started reaching out through our Chief Information Officer, and we have a number of other relying parties now who are waiting in the wings as we go forward with the process here. Challenges, obviously scope changes. As Michigan said, things changed, things shifted. Working with the third parties to understand their proofing mechanisms. Experian is one of our partners. They've been extremely helpful with us. I had to go through and get something like 4 or 5 legal signatures to access their test data. And they were very helpful in getting us through those hurdles. The other part, too, is dealing with the other federal entities. Our welfare department, for example, deals with food stamps, SNAP, medical benefits, health records, the IRS, the Social Security Administration, you name it, they get touched by it. In fact, I think right now they're undergoing their biannual IRS audit. So they're having fun back there. But one of our issues or concerns right now is if we do some additional verification, is that acceptable to, say, CMS for benefit programs there? And we'll have to work through those program offices. Opportunities, as I said, we're looking at more agency participants, both as attribute verifiers. Let's face it, the state has a lot of information on a lot of people. The default ID is your driver's license, and we're the ones who issue those, along with the state ID cards. We also have medical information, financial information, and so forth. So we're working on going forward with that, and also looking at the other outside credential service providers. Piyush mentioned F6 through the post office. We're also looking at possibly things like Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other such identities. Right now we have about 2.2 million citizens registered in our citizen repository, and one of the issues that our welfare department has raised, first of all, they're running out of good user IDs. There are only so many J. Smiths that you can register before you start getting kind of crazy with adding numbers. The other thing is that the users typically are not accessing our systems on a daily basis. So if they come in once a month or every couple of months, they start to forget what their ID is or what their password is, and we have to go through a whole reset process to get them back in again. Some suggestions we have for the IDESG. First of all, the committee updates. I'm kind of a member, but on an unofficial level. Our legal department had some issues with us becoming a formal member of the IDESG. But trying to get some of the communications out and setting the standards and guidelines are very useful to us.